for both students and teachers, since even there are different ways grammar can be taught. Sometimes teachers struggle looking for the best way to teach the grammar according to their context. And sometimes students as well, they find really difficult to memorize the grammar rules by heart, so they cannot retain them or they cannot comprehend them. And when it comes the grammar session during the lessons, they dislike them. And another problem, or maybe one of the problems, is because as teachers, we don't motivate or we don't challenge our students to work the grammar rules by themselves. So because of this, Ellis proposes the use of consciousness raising tasks to teach grammar. So the idea with this task is that, for example, the traditional methods, they only focus on form, but they leave aside the teaching of meaning and the focus on the language functions, which are super important when learning a language. So the idea of using consciousness raising tasks is that this type of tasks provide the students the opportunity to work with the form, the meaning, and as well as the function. Consciousness raising tasks can be defined as a set of activities that guide learners in order to uncover the role of the grammatical structures. The idea is that they can work with their analytical abilities and that they can notice, understand, and later they can apply these rules in oral or written production. The advantages of consciousness raising tasks is that there is attention in the three forms, in the meaning and in the form and the function of the language. This type of tasks encourage students to learn grammar in a different way because students are challenged. They are kind of guided to uncover the role. And the most important or the objective of consciousness raising tasks is that the students can develop analytical abilities. So whenever they have to work with grammar structures, they recall that analysis, and they can put into practice the noticing and understanding and monitoring abilities, so they can use the language more accurately. In addition, the idea of this consciousness raising task, or one of the advantages, is that it is more student centered, which means that students are not only expecting the teacher to provide them with the complete rule as the traditional grammar method. Instead, students are challenged to and motivated to discover the rules by themselves. According to Ellis, when using consciousness raising tasks, it is important not only make students to be aware of the target structure, but because if we only make students aware of the target structure, this doesn't mean that the students are going to really learn that grammar structure that we want them to learn. So he proposes 3 senses of consciousness raising tasks. And the first one is consciousness as noticing. And in this area, he proposes 2 types of tasks: text enhancement tasks and interpretation tasks. These type of tasks help students only to notice the grammatical forms. Students are usually given a text that contains the target structure, and this text highlights with different colors, or it underlines the new grammar structure, so students can focus their attention on those structures. But the most important thing with this type of test is that the students can also work with the meaning. So after the students read the text, they are asked to answer some comprehension questions to see if they understood what they have read. Interpretation tasks. In this type of tasks, Ellis proposes to provide the students with sentences that contain the structure, and students have to demonstrate their understanding just by selecting or classifying different types of sentences. In the second area, consciousness as understanding, the author proposes consciousness raising activities. In this type of activities are very similar to the previous interpretation task, but in this type of task, students are given the sentences and they are asked questions about the structure, not about the meaning, but about the structure. And they have to kind of internalize they understand the rule so they can complete some charts with the rules. And finally, in order to really make sure that the students are going to learn those grammatical structures, the author proposes consciousness as control. In this type of tasks, we have text manipulation tasks. Students have the opportunity, now that they have noticed, now that they have understood the rule, they will be able to practice with that, with those new language forms, completing sentences, or by filling the blanks, or by doing a matching exercise. And the last task that is proposed by Ellis is monitoring tasks. In this type of task, learners have to demonstrate, they refine the acquisition of those grammatical structures. They are given usually a text, and this text contains errors, and the students have to identify the errors and they have to correct them. Consciousness raising tasks can be used in combination with a communicative approach. So students, after all these tasks, they can produce a written or an oral product. And the idea is to see if the students really can use those grammatical forms accurately. In this sense, the objective of my study is to implement consciousness raising tasks to teach present and past simple tenses. And I am going to not just implement them, but I am also going to evaluate by using pre-test and post-test what is the effectiveness. If this type of tasks have an effective, if they improve the teaching of grammar, and if the students can perform better during different grammar exercises, or when they are asked to use the rules, and that they can use them in their daily communication. The research question is the same. It's how effective is, well, it's pretty much the same. How effective is to use consciousness raising tasks to teach present and past simple tenses inductively to beginner EFL Mexican Law University students at Escuela Superior de Huejutla. My context is that this research is going to be implemented at my institution. At Escuela Superior de Huejutla, we have different majors, and we have observed that the law major, the students who are enrolled in this program, they always struggle in general when they are learning English, but they particularly express that when it comes to the grammar part, they don't understand, or they find difficult to remember the rules when they are asked to perform different exercises or to produce the language. We have seen this because also we, in the midterm exams, when we evaluate them, they don't have a good performance and they usually fail. The justification of my study is that in case, if the results of this study are positive, my students, the students at my institution, particularly this group of students, will understand and use grammatical tenses, especially present and past tenses, accurately. They will develop, the idea is to help them to develop analytical skills so they can later apply these skills when they are learning grammar, and hopefully they will be encouraged to learn grammar and perform better in grammar tests. It will also help the teachers at my institution because it will provide us a different way to teach grammar. We will identify a specific tasks that we can implement or modify, and hopefully we can improve the teaching of grammar at our institution. The previous studies regarding the teaching of grammar by using consciousness raising tasks are, for example, that there have been studies. This study, the first one, it shows the effects, or it analyzes the effects of consciousness raising tasks against the traditional PPT method to improve grammatical accuracy. This research was carried out in a high school, and they used pre-test and post-test, but they only cover 2 senses of consciousness raising, which is, for example, noticing, and they only cover understanding, but they didn't have an activity, or they didn't evaluate if the students were able to monitor their performance after they have learned the structures. This study uses identification, classification, and hypothesis build checking tasks, and the results were positive. Consciousness raising tasks were more effective than the traditional method, and the students were able to recognize the elements of the structure, become familiar with the rules, and understood the meaning and the form. In the second study, Salazar evaluated the effectiveness of consciousness raising tasks to teach three grammar tenses: simple past, past continuous, and present perfect. But this author not only evaluated the effectiveness of consciousness raising tasks comparing pre-test and post-test, but also wanted to explore students' attitudes towards the use of consciousness raising tasks. And this study was carried out in a high school, and this author used a diagnostic test and a post-test and observations and a journal and interviews to see the reaction of students after the implementation of consciousness raising tests. And the students, again, were positive. Students were able to describe the different verb tenses, and they were able to recognize the mistakes when using the structure. So this means that they monitor their production. And it seems that these tasks have a long-term effect in some delays post-test. And in the last study, it was pretty much similar to the previous two, but in this case, it was a more complete study because it addresses the 3 senses of consciousness raising tasks, use text enhancement tasks, monitor the students' production, and also identify the perceptions of the students. And the students, it was found that the students joined learning grammar by doing the task because they were working in groups and they involved negotiations and discussions. The main authors that I'm going to be using in my investigation are Willis and Ellis, because I will be basing my tasks mainly with these two authors. I will be selecting some activities and I will be combining them, and I will be addressing the three senses of consciousness raising tasks. And well, in my methodology, I am going to be working with 30 to 40 law university students with basic English level. I'm going to use an applied research method because I'm going to be doing an intervention, and I will be implemented a mixed research approach because I will be obtaining quantitative data from the test, but also from the journals and from the questionnaires. I will be gathering qualitative information. The instruments are pre-test, post-test, very similar to the studies, questionnaires and journals with guided questions. The procedure is that I'm going to apply first a pretest, like a diagnostic, to see the student's knowledge of the two tenses. After, I'm going to implement the consciousness raising task to teach present and to teach past tenses. And after, I'm going to apply post-test to compare the results from the pretest to the post-test in order to see if the students improve in the use of this or learn these two tenses. And then after each task, a journal will be carried out. Students will be answering or completing a journal. But this journal will have some guided questions that I'm going to be preparing. I don't have them yet, but I will be preparing them. And students will be like writing their perceptions about if the task was easy, if they find these activities easier, or what are their feelings, or if they have any difficulty when doing the task.
1 more minute, Liliana.
Sorry?
1 more minute. Okay.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Yes, I'm about to finish. Thank you, doctor. And a questionnaire will be also implemented in order to gather a student's opinion about the use of consciousness raising tasks. The pretest and the post-test will be using 10 TOEFL-like items with 5 multiple choice sentence construction. I decided to use this type of exercises because during my intervention, I will be giving the students error analysis activities. So that's why I expect that they can, in the post-test, show that they can really analyze the errors and use the present and simple past tenses. And my data analysis will be a quantitative and a qualitative analysis because of the data that I will be collecting. And these are my references.
Okay, thank you very much, Liliana. And I'm going to stop the presentation so that I can see if we have questions or comments or both. So, anyone? I just saw the little hand with Sophia, but it was just like applauding, right, Sophie? So yes, Maestro Jonathan, of course, and then Dr. Sonny.
Yes, thank you. I think that what Liliana has done so far has been a good job. So firstly, I'd like to congratulate her on her work. I think that what she's doing is very helpful because it encourages responsibility in students. And we need to promote that a little more nowadays. I think students leave more their learning to teachers, and this is a good strategy. Hopefully, Liliana can see the positive effects of consciousness raising tasks in her context, and then in a near future, implement it towards TOEFL, which is something that she'd like to do. We've talked about it, but first she wants to kind of pilot and see how this has an impact in her classroom, and then it could lead somewhere else. So I think that it's great work that Liliana has done so far, and we're more than welcome to hearing any comments, any observations that you guys may have, so we can do even better. So thanks for the hard work, Liliana, and thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Jonathan. And now we have some comments from Sonny, yeah, and afterwards, Dr. Mumford.
Yeah, hello. Hi, Liliana. I think you did, as Master Jonathan said, I think the study is quite interesting. I'm sorry, I have problems with my camera. I don't know what happened, but I just want to tell you that it is not an observation. It is only a recommendation of a material that it may be useful. When I was listening to you, I remember one study from Universidad Autónoma de Querétaro, that it is about this, and they used pruebas de gramaticalidad y evocación estimulada as instruments for the pre-test and post-test, just to collect more to have like a more deep collection of the thoughts and perceptions of the students regarding the structures they were learning. So I'm gonna send you the link in the chat, and that's it, okay? But I really like the study. I think you have, for me, the main issue here, it is just to decide the pre-test and post-test, right? And the kind of test, and that it can actually help you to gain insights and to actually be able to collect this kind of data, right? This reflection that sometimes it is, but well, my main concern, it is only with the multiple choice items that you have. I don't know how helpful they may be when you are trying to collect your students' thoughts and insights regarding the grammar topic, no? But I think the thesis may help you. I'm gonna send you the link in the chat, and that's it, okay? Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Doctor.
Thank you, Sonny. And now it's Dr. Markford's turn.
Okay. During the presentation, what I was thinking was what would be nice would be to separate out from the controlled practice of grammar to the actual production, students' own production, that you could show that they had some sort of ownership of grammar. Otherwise, it might become quite, the focus might be too much on accuracy, consciousness raising, etc. And I know you have the activities there where students take control of the grammar. And I think it would be nice to highlight those two parts to it, that you've got them trying to be as accurate as possible with grammar, getting to understand the forms, etc., but a little bit of taking ownership of the grammar and using it for their own purposes. Because otherwise, I think you could get into these sort of accusations that grammar is very controlled, boring, etc. And I think if you emphasize that aspect, it would make the consciousness raising, the students can see the benefit of it. But yeah, it's a very nice project.
Thank you, Jerry. Well, I have a final comment. It's basically a little bit the same that Dr. Markford said. I just like very much the exercise or the activity you propose about identifying the errors in a text. And I think you could consider just like the use of more authentic texts, different text genres, where you can see the real use of present and past, because even if it's basic level, I think that there are a lot of text genres, I mean authentic text that you could use in order to identify the errors, but also in order to produce other interesting activities. So we could use, I mean, you could use those materials, and it's not only the form you work on, but also the function in a real, I mean, in a real text, and not only at the level of the sentence. But that's my only comment. Okay.
And well, I'm sorry, and I think that's the purpose of the evocación estimulada, that it is just put students into a communicative task where they have to interact and they have to use the target language in real life situations. So I think it may be useful.
Exactly. Yeah, when we're talking about real life situations, we're talking about texts, I mean, spoken or written text. So yes, that's basically it. Okay, thank you very much, Liliana. Congratulations. Yeah, you want to say something? Go ahead.
Yes, right now that all the doctors are here, I would like to ask a piece of advice. In my study, I'm not considering a student's production, but I want to, like at the end of this task, students can, I don't know if the students can produce like a text or something like that in order to make it a little bit more communicative and addressing a little bit about what Dr. Jerry mentioned. I don't know if it will be a good idea, because consciousness raising doesn't cover until that point, but I don't know if I can do it. Now my question is for you. Yeah, I don't know.
May I?
Yes, yes.
I think you could think about the production of a very simple text. For example, I don't know, the description of someone or a biography, but a simple biography which seems maybe just like a list of sentences, but it's not, because you're linking clauses and everything. I think the fact of getting to the production could be very useful and even motivating for the student. I'm not an expert in the area. However, I think if you can get just like a piece of text spoken or written, would be just like a perfect scenario to end this intervention. But it's up to you guys. And yes, Dr. Mockford.
I mean, it's really appropriate what you're saying, really relevant. Probably what you might want to do is find out what interests students in English. What do they want to do? Because, you know, if you ask students, what did you do for your summer holidays? It's kind of boring, predictable, etc. So maybe just as you're doing your research is to try and find out what are students interested in and how English grammar could help them achieve that. But that would very much, and that's what I was trying to say about taking control of the language. If they can see the purpose of the present simple, past simple, etc., for their own purposes, then it would become meaningful for them. But my advice would be to try and find out from the students, you know, what are they interested in trying to achieve with English?
Thank you, doctor. I will consider that. Thank you so much.
That's an advice. That's an advice. Yes, very good. Thank you, Dr. Jerry. And well, thank you, Liliana. And now it's Sophie's turn, I think. Yes, Sofía Margarita Villegas Garcia, and the title of her thesis until yesterday, it was Evaluating the Impact of Gamification on English Language Learning Among Elementary School Students Using EducaPlay platform. So the stage is all yours, Sofía.
Can you see my presentation?
Perfectly.
Thank you. Well, sorry if I look a bit nervous. It's a really new experience. Okay. Good morning, everyone. And today I will be presenting my thesis progress. The title, as Dr. Sara said, is Evaluating the Impact of Gamification on English Language Learning among elementary school students using EducaPlay platform. Okay, English language teaching often encounters challenge in keeping students engaged, especially when it comes to vocabulary, pronunciation, and grammar. At Serapio Cantú Barragán Elementary School, students from first to sixth grade had been struggling with this aspect of English learning. And traditional methods had been using for a long time, but they haven't always been successful in maintaining student interest and motivation. To address these issues, digitally looks gamification using technology as a potential way to improve English language learning. The focus is on using EducaPlay, a platform that allows teachers to create personalized learning activities. This study aims to see how gamification through EducaPlay might change how elementary school students learn English, especially in terms of vocabulary, pronunciation, and grammar, and also to find out if this approach can make learning English more effective and enjoyable for young students. Let's start with the context of this study. Serapio Cantú Barragán Elementary School is a public institution at Reynosa, Tamaulipas, near the border between the USA and Mexico. Approximately between 200 and 220 students attend from third to sixth grade, between 6 and 12 years old. Each grade has between 35 and 37 students. The school has two English teachers, each covering 3 grades levels. In my case, I cover the first 3 grades. Regarding the resources, there is a computer lab with 20 functional computers and internet access. And for the English classes, we use Cambridge Global English Second Edition textbooks in all grades. Well, now let's take a look at the problems that we are addressing. Student engagement is the key issue. We have had difficult maintaining their interest in learning English using traditional methods. We often use only use textbooks. We rely on exercise like dictations, etc. During lessons, it has been observed that students struggle with vocabulary retention, often unable to remember and use new words effectively. Pronunciation is another challenge, especially with sounds, for example, like the th in words like things or three. Grammar application is another problem, with the student making errors like saying he go to school instead he goes to school. Sorry. And regarding the last point, regarding about the National Program of English Basic Education established by the SEP here in Mexico. Well, in elementary school education, students should reach um, A1 level by second grade, A2 by fourth grade, and B1 by sixth grade. These levels correspond to the Common European Framework. Well, uh, so these problems make it difficult for the school, for the English teacher, and also for the students to meet this expectation of English language proficiency. The research objective of this study is to evaluate the impact of educational gamification on English learning, unlike traditional methods, to improve uh, student engagement and also improve vocabulary, pronunciation, and grammatical skills. I must clarify that my objective is only the contrast between gamification and traditional methods. My intention is not to put uh, traditional methods on the bad side. Simply that gamification can be an option to increase the motivation of the students to learn English and how they can improve in different linguistic aspects. Where the research question, these two research questions form the core of this study. They are designed to explore not just the effectiveness of the gamification through EducaPlay, but also to understand its specific advantages over traditional methods. The focus is on both the overall impact on English language learning and the popular effect on students' engagement and skill development. Well, to justify this research is supported by various important reasons. The first one, for example, Dr. Hugo Trejo, in his research about technological resource for the integration of gamification in the classroom, he states that technology is significantly changed classroom dynamics. He also emphasized uh, how technological tools can transform traditional classes into interactive um, learning experience, better meeting the students' needs. Uh, the Chivo et al. For their part, they mentioned that gamification implemented in educational context can improve student motivation, participation, and performance. Also, the last part is very interesting. McClendon highlights that this alpha generation is very visual and interactive and expect the integration of technology into the daily lives, including education, of course. They become comfortable with digital interface from a very early age and often learn best through gamified experience. So this highlights the need to adapt the teaching methods to match the their preferences and expectation of this alpha generation. Now, let's take a look on the concept part. The first one is gamification. Okay, Malone in 1980 was one of the first teachers to relate gamification to classroom learning. He demonstrated that combining games with education uh, create engaging experience and generate more enjoyable learning experience. He also called it edutainment. In 2002, Healing introduced the term gamification to describe the cultural environment of the game. And for the part of the turning it all, in 2011, they defined gamification as the use of game elements in non-gaming context to make a product, a service, or application more fun, attractive, and motivating. As you can see, this term is considered a revolution that has introduced significant change in society. On the other hand, EducaPlay, in a few words, is an online platform for creating and sharing educational games and activities. Well, the following slides are simply to show you what this platform is like, um, uh, which is free and very easy to use. It can be accessed through computers, tablets, cell phones. I don't know if, oh yeah, cell phones, sorry, with internet access and providing an email. And it has many templates, as you can see, to use and modify. You can even use the templates of other people who create their school activities through this platform, and you can modify them according to your needs or your content. Let me, okay. Well, we have reached the part about the previous studies, almost finished this presentation. Uh, Classic case study involved 112 upper intermediate students in Poland. Using a descriptive, observational, and quasi-experimental approach with surveys, they found improved motivation and changed perceptions of grammar learning. Uh, in the other part, Cosar Gutierrez and Saez Lopez conduct game-based learning through Minecraft education. That's another platform which is similar to EducaPlay. Uh, in this study, the participants were 89 students, teachers, studying a master's degree in primary education. He used a quasi-experimental approach for the experiment and questionnaires to know the students' perception of this gamification method, which was highly positive. The research intention was to motivate future teachers to use gamification methods in their students. On the other hand, we had a study more related to this type. Cadena in their study, they use the EducaPlay platform to teach English language to 119 university students from Ecuador. Their quantitative experimental study using surveys and statistical analysis, they found a positive learning environment, active engagement, and a reduced learning time. Um, well, these were just some of the previous studies from my literature review. On the other hand, we have the basis of the theoretical framework that would guide this study. the theory by Thomas Malone, 1980. He identifies three key elements: challenge, curiosity, and fantasy. So, in intrinsically motivating instruction. This theory provides a clear framework that evaluates the effectiveness of gamification in language learning. My intention is to work under Malone's historical framework, applying these elements to the design and evaluation of gamification English language learning activities. Well, and this tentative methodology part, my intention is to use an intervention project. Um, well, the number and the name of the phase in an intervention project can vary depending on each author perspective, their approach, their discipline. For clarity, I will use the four phases proposed by Perez Serrano in order: diagnosis, training, implementation, and evaluation. Um, in the diagnosis phase will involve an initial English proficiency test. For the training phase, educa-based activities will be designed for vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation. The implementation part will involve tentative 60 students, 10 students from each grade, from first to sixth grade. And the last one in the evaluation phase will use rubrics based on Malone's story, along with proficiency tests and students' surveys.
Sophia, 2 more minutes.
Thank you. I almost finished. Well, this is the rubric that I was talking about. It assesses various aspects of a student's performance. It provides a comprehensive view of progress, evaluating factors like achievement and motivation, considering also factors like cognitive and non-cognitive in another aspect. Well, finally, this is the last slide, the limitations, the tentative limitation. Well, the limitations that this study may encounter, the first one is the duration of the intervention may not fully capture long-term learning effects, missing sustaining impact on language proficiency. The second limitation is that assessing motivation and engagement presents challenges in accurately measuring these non-cognitive factors, which are subjective and can vary over time. Well, those are the reference that I used for this presentation. Well, I really appreciate your attention. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sophie. Thank you very much. I'm going to stop your presentation so that I can see who wants to say something. Anyone? Okay, we can begin with Jonathan and afterwards with Jerry. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I think Jerry can start now to see what comments he has for.
It's fair, right? Okay.
Yeah,
Dr. Mockford?
That sounded like a threat.
It was not.
No, that's not the intention, Jerry. I'm sorry.
I'm just joking. Listening to the presentation, I wonder whether you're going to do some sort of assessment of the activities that you use. Because what I was thinking was that students might have a lot of fun, but not learn anything. And that might not be their fault. So you're measuring that their learning, but it might be the result of those games being too interesting, having too much fun, that they don't pick up on learning. So I just wondered whether you would do something of some sort of evaluation of the games, because I really like the idea that you say things like motivation and participation are really difficult to measure, which is obviously part of gamification. So do you think you will do some sort of evaluation of the activities?
Well, the Educable platform has a system evaluating independent that you can use that well for evaluate the individual participation of each student, so you can see the progress or well their in this case how they improve in this case in each linguistic element depending on what you are working on in that moment because you well the the my intent is to make an activity for each linguistic element. One activity designed for vocabulary, for pronunciation, and for grammar, because well, the Educa platform has a lot of templates and options that you can use. This platform has multimedia. Um, Quizzes, well, a lot of options that you can use to personalize your activities and cover the needs or others aspects that you need to work or attend. I don't know if it is answered your question.
Yeah, because you're showing you're going to take in consideration the effect of each game on achieving the result. Yeah, it sounds fine.
Thank you, Sophie. And now, Jonathan, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Jerry. I think it'd be good to have a second opinion as well on the activity, Sophia, because it's quite common that we access these tools online, and sometimes people design a lot of stuff, and it does not necessarily like have a well structure that leads to effective learning. So it could be good like to have a second opinion on the development of the activity. So I get Jerry's point. Right.
Yeah,
I just wanted to congratulate you, Sophia. I think that
thank you.
well, it has been a little hard, you know, to like redefine the topic, and we've done good in that. So I think it's taking form. So that's quite nice. A pro that I see in your research is that you are exploring the alpha generation. The oldest alpha is around 14 years of age right now, so it's quite important to start doing research with this generation. And it could help future teachers in their understanding of the generation. And exploring EducaPlay, which is a platform that has been active for so many years. Before COVID, like it was already well known, especially in Spain. But then it took like some more importance after COVID. So I think those are two pros that I see in your research. And well, congratulate you again. So been nice working with you.
Thank you so much. My I also say that my uh, topic of my thesis changed a lot. So I need to start from the beginning, but it's really worthy. And thanks to my support and guidance of my thesis director.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Sophie. Alexandra, you wanted to say something, I think. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, can I?
Yeah, of course.
Or are only the teachers? Okay. So when I was looking at your research objectives, Sophia, I saw that there was like assess improvements in vocabulary, pronunciation, and grammar, right? So I don't know if it's too much focusing on these three aspects, or are you limiting it to just one, for example, just grammar or just pronunciation? Or I don't know if you have talked with that to your thesis director. Well, I don't know if it's too much. I don't know.
Yeah, I was thinking about that, but my the purpose of this study is not to focus too much on this. It's important, yeah, of course, and I will be mention them through my study, but my intention is not to focus on these elements. The principal intention is to demonstrate that you can engage your students through these activities to teach English language. and well, that they can be useful in the classrooms according to this digital era. But yeah, of course, I will. Well, I don't know if I can talk more um, about these linguistic aspects because well, I don't know if I can because I want to delimit a bit my study, but it will be interesting if well, I talk about some of them about these linguistic aspects.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Alexandra.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie. And any more questions or comments for Sophia? Let me see the hands. Okay, so if there are not, next presenter is Janice, yes, Janina Reyes Villarraus, implementing turn taking and sequences in the language classroom to develop A2 learners' interactional competence. Her thesis advisor, her thesis director is Dr. Ariel Vázquez Carranza, who is just here. Thank you. Thank you, Ariel. And okay, go ahead. The stage is all yours, Janice.
Okay. Well, can you see my presentation?
Perfectly.
Perfectly. Okay, thank you so much. Well, in this case, yeah, you have already mentioned one topic, and well, according to we were talking with my thesis director, Dr. Ariel Vázquez. He posed two questions. So, what do you decide to do to work on the turn taking and sequences? In this case, strategies, or in this case, to imply or to use them in the model of interactional competence. That's why, I decide to focus more on the assessment. That's why my topic is implementing, in this case, a model of interactional competence test, but in the language classroom, of course, to assess my A2 learners' spoken interaction. Okay. So the Dr. Ariel Vázquez Carranza, he's my thesis director. And well, in this case, we have the overview. I don't know, is it possible? Okay, well, this is what we're going to see in the following presentation, yes? Okay, about the introduction, yes. I would like to start with one specific quotation taken from Garrott and Pickering, because they especially focus on the following. They said that humans are designed for, in this case, for dialogue rather than monologue. For example, I know that as human beings or as individuals, for example, every single moment of our lives, we are, for example, always interacting with someone, talking about a different infinite number of topics, yes? However, what happens when we implement or when we try to use those interactional resources that we have already learned since we were born, in this case, but now apply into a second, in acquiring a second language, right? The question is it easy? Is it easy for our learners, in this case, to develop this interactional competence? Well, in this case, Daskins, who cites Walsh, he states that, for example, in our teaching context, we have overlooked, or sometimes we have taken for granted as teachers, the fact that the L2 classroom is also a social context. And instead of trying to make that context more like the real outside world, well, in this case, it's more important for us, for teachers, in this case, to spend our time trying to understand the interactional process, which create the real inside world in the L2 classroom. So what does it mean to understand the interactional process? In this case, I have raised awareness as a professor that it means to create the conditions, or in this case, the atmosphere to help students to become better interactants, okay? Well, in this case, for example, Walsh, 2012, he suggests the importance the importance of training learners. He focused on training learners to become better interactants because he has observed that as professors, when we are teaching or testing, that in this case, this is what I'm going to focus for my research paper, that we have the tendency to emphasize on individuals' ability to produce correct sentences rather than to negotiate the meanings or clarify a point of view or idea. Well, in short, the most important is to consider how effectively a candidate interacts with others, or how well those candidates are proactive and they are, for example, co-constructing the meaning with the other interlocutor. Okay. Well, so I focus my information definitely on experts. Those experts are from different universities around the world, and I decide to mention and to show the pictures of them because sometimes we don't know if they are alive or they have already passed away. But in this case, they are the current professors who have been investigating or researching about the importance of interactional competence. Well, Steve Walsh, Richard F. Jones, Carsten Rover, and Simona Pekarek, when they describe what is interactional competence, well, I would like you to please check those important keywords that they are using in their definitions of what is interactional competence. For example, Steve Walsh, he defines that the interactional competence specifically in the classroom is very important because it's going to be a tool for us as teachers, in this case, to mediate or to assist, in this case, learning. So in this case, I want to focus on mediating and assisting, right? So how much as professors we are ready to assist of learners in the interactions that we are having with them, or the interaction that they are having learners to learners. Richard Jones specifies that interaction competence, for example, is the use of specific interactional resources. Those interactional resources are the ones that we commonly use since we were born, yes? For example, those are, for example, the turn-taking management or topic management or interactive listening, or what do the learners, for example, use when there are some breakdowns in the conversation, how do they repair that? But also the importance of the nonverbal behavior that is also communicating something, okay? The other professor, Carsten Rover, well, he says that people use interactional competence to manage, in this case, how to talk in an orderly manner, in a way that it can make sense to each other, and in this case, to preserve the social harmony. And finally, one important expert, that Simona Pekarek, she mentions that, well, it's important they are reconceptualizing what is interactional competence, and that's why she says that the interactional competence is currently conceptualized as learners' systematic practices for organizing the social interaction. Okay, so following what the experts say, in this case, my question is how do we as professors imagine that, how is the process of the spoken interaction? For example, do we as teachers, do we know or do we understand what elements are in the spoken interaction? So in this case, Evelina Galazzi, yes, Evelina Galazzi and Linda Taylor, in order to help us as professors to have an idea what are the elements of the spoken interaction, well, they create, or they made like a metaphorical visual representation in the form of a tree of how the interaction competence is currently understood, or how can we see in that interactional competence, and what interaction resources the speakers and the listeners use to construct the interaction in order, okay, in purposeful and meaningful way. That's why, as we can see here, the speakers as well as listeners, so they become proactive, right? So and in that proactivity, well, they make use of those resources, interactional resources. What are those interactional resources? Well, we have the turn management, topic management, nonverbal behavior, the breakdown repair, and the interactive listening. But also from each element, in this case, where the students or the learners, well, they need in this case to make use of the other resources. For example, in tour management, that is the point where I'm going to focus. In this case, it's important to help learners to know how, for example, how to, in this case, how to start or how to initiate or how, what are the remarks, okay, to start or in this case, to end up a conversation, okay? Well, for that reason, to this point, well, I wonder, yes, I wonder as a professor, how can I assess if my students or if my learners or the learners are really developing this competence of the interactional competence? Well, for that reason, I want to focus my research project, for example, on assessing the interactional competence, which I understand probably is not easy. But in this case, the research aims to, well, number one, to design, after that, applying and analyzing through a model of assessment, and to promote the interactional competence between the teacher learner, but most of all, I want to see the interaction among the learners, okay, with real communication. That's why I pose my research question. My research question would be to what extent the implementation of an interactional competence model, assessment model, develops the students' interactional competence. Well, in this case, my rationale, if I focus my rationale on a theoretical framework, well, I can say that, for example, number one, from a theoretical framework, the development, as I already mentioned, of interactional, of the IC, or interactional competence, according to Walsh, is going to support a mode to help students to have a real interaction about the teacher and also the classmates by applying interactional resources in the classroom. But therefore, in this case, therefore, the more we focus as professors along the classes to promote and enhance the interactional strategies, well, the better the students will achieve and understand the process of co-constructing the meanings, which is the most important, right? And my rationale also, my second point is that I consider that this kind of a study is going to be very beneficial for my students who belong to, in this case, to different majors in the Universidad Veracruzana, at the Universidad Veracruzana. And in this case, they are young adults who are usually able to collaborate as part of their major programs. And I know that they can develop, it's important for them to develop an interactional competence, because for these students who are in this program, they are specifically from the program of, or in the major of economics and administrative, so our administration. Somehow in the future, they will have to, in this case, have an interaction with different people around the world, right? Well, and it's going to be important, this is going to be important because in the interactions, for example, in the interactions they're having, well, it's going to help also in their final oral examinations. Well, so what can I say about the recent studies? Where am I going to, in this case, follow the model for assessing? Well, there are many professors, but in this case, we have two of them who are very young, in this case, adults. Professors, in this case, So Young, in 2015, he made a study in which she designed her interactional competence test, number one, in needs analysis on the English for academic purposes domain. And then as a second point, she used two data collection elicitation methods, for example, questionnaires and interviews to find out what range, in this case, of social actions her students, they were struggling. And when I mentioned in what social actions, I mean, for example, if they need to interact with each other in order to get to an agreement, or in a disagreement, or in this case to show refusal, or maybe a request. Okay, so in this case, finally, when she discovered in what social actions their students were struggling, she finally designed an interactional task in which the test takers were, in this case, they were asked to perform a role play with a professor and a classmate and elicit the actions such as making a request for a recommendation letter, or in this case for agreement on a meeting time. The second study is based on the Professor David Wade Dye in 2019. He also conducted a task-based needs analysis. Also, that is the step number 1 of the interactional needs of the L2 Chinese speakers. And then he used, for example, he made different interviews using the Socratic hermeneutic interviews, and also with written communication. And from this study, he elicited a lot of qualitative data on where the L2 Chinese speakers encounter problems when interacting, in this case in China, with Chinese people. So as a result, finally, he designed nine different role-play tasks targeting on top ranking the social actions that the L2 Chinese speakers struggle with the most. Okay, so those are the recent studies. For that reason, my investigation, the investigation is going to be applied in this case on following a qualitative method through the conversation analysis. And the methodology that I want to follow is like the model, like the Professor Su Jong and David Wade Dye follow, such as number 1, I need to start with the needs analysis stage, in which I'm going to apply an exploratory questionnaire and different interviews to find out in which social actions my students from the area of administrative and economics, in this case, they are having problems. In the second one stage, in the pre-application, well, after analyzing the exploratory questionnaire, I'm going to focus on designing the interactional task based on the social actions. The step number 3, the while application, like the core, is going to be to apply the interactional competence test to assess their performance, well, in this case, using the via audio recording. And finally, in the post stage would be, well, starting how to start in recollecting the data, well, using the conversation analysis data to verify, in this case, to what extent my students or the learners, they have improved or they have enhanced their interactional competence. And well, finally, those are the reference that I use, that I already mentioned, from different experts in the area of interactional competence.
Thank you very much, Janet. I'm going to stop your presentation so that I can see who wants to participate and say something about your research. Anyone, any comments or questions for Janice? Yeah, so we have Dr. Ramos and Dr. Vasquez Carranza. Since you are the thesis director, Ariel, I'm going to leave you at the end, okay? So go ahead, Maggie. And
well,
ladies first also.
Besides ladies first.
Yes.
Well, first of all, Jan and Ariel, congratulations. It looks like a very well structured piece of research, yes, or a piece of thesis, of course. very interesting as well. And my concern will be like time, just basically time,
Yes.
because it is like a very well structured, but it
Yes.
is a little bit demanding. However,
Demanding, yes.
like really interesting. Yes. And the assessing of the interactional competence. Well, just my next comment is I want to see the next step.
Yes. The methodology. The methodology, you mean?
Yes, I want to see the next steps. Yes, I
Okay.
want to see that the project finished.
Okay.
That's what
Yeah,
I
okay.
mean.
Over. Okay. Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Every single semester, well, fortunately, I have the opportunity to work with one class for 4 months in a row without stopping for 4 months. So, well, I hope if I don't have the time, probably they want to continue with me, the students working with me. So I'm going to try to encourage them to continue. I don't know, because I know that it's going to be very demanding.
And probably to add like the opposite criticism, classroom language is like not real, not
Okay.
real language, not the language that we use outside
Yes.
classrooms.
Exactly.
Just to add that comment, because it seems
Yeah.
that
Okay.
yes, it is very natural to talk like classroom based. And yes, I do recognize that it is a different setting and that we do have different rules to speak there. However,
Yeah.
there are like there is the counterpart, and probably you just can add it and counter argue about that. The only
Okay.
thing that I like make sure for you to add. Yes.
Thank you. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Doctora.
Thank you, Maggie. And now, Ariel, it's your turn. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me? Yes, right?
Yes.
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 Ah, good. Well, thank you. Well, first of all, I would like also to congratulate Janina because I mean, it was a bit of a tough semester, last semester for her, and I mean, she was able to work in this past days very hard to refine the idea that she had at the beginning and to deliver this presentation. And also thank you for because our meetings were at 6 a.m. in the morning for her because of the time difference. So thank you for that, Janine, as well.
Well, thank you so much.
And well, yeah. Also, I think a good thing is that we you sort of now your idea is much clearer than before. So I'm very happy about that. And also I'm very happy because you really went into the literature and you read and everything. You were very informed on the topic. And but also as Dr. Ramos suggests, also the methodology part, I think we will need to think about it a little bit
Yes.
more in terms. I mean, the idea is excellent, and the stages are very well defined. They are very good. But I think what we need to think about in the future for next semester, that would be our most important task is to see how long is going to be this intervention or this application of this type of testing.
Okay.
If it's going to be for the whole semester or maybe only for one particular time. I mean, we will need to see because yeah. So, but I mean, that we'll get to that next semester. And as part also of the, because I mean, this is related to that because as part, I mean, it's important to know what the students needs, in the needs analysis, but also, I mean, in the needs analysis, also we need to include what the students need to know for that particular semester, no? At the end of the semester, they need to know such and such, or they need to be able to do such and such. So yeah, I perhaps based on that we can decide what would be the general process of the application of this, maybe for a particular I don't know, task or a particular type of activity that I need to know how to do. But we'll get to that. That was my comment, and well done, Janina, for the hard work these days, these past few days.
Oh, thanks to you, doctor, for your help. Yes, a lot. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ariel. Danke schön. And well, I don't know if there are any more questions or comments for Janice. If no. So I think we can go to Michel's presentation, Guillermo Michel González Adir, and his thesis title is The Effectiveness of Inductive Teaching on EFL Learners. And his thesis director is also Dr. Ariel Vázquez Carranza. So Michel, the stage is all yours.
Perfect, thank you. Can you hear me well, and can you see my screen?
Yes, perfectly.
All right, that's good. Now let's get this started. First of all, the name of it is The Effectiveness of Inductive and the Deductive Teaching Methods to Enhance Student Grammar Ability. Well, the first thing that I would like to mention is the benefits of learning English. Too many people say learning English is very important, but not too many people say why. So we can find a lot of benefits out of it. For example, the first one is that if we speak English, we are able to communicate in different parts of the world, no matter that you're in China, Japan, maybe in a country where English is not the native speaking language. You can communicate in that language because at the end you're gonna find someone who speaks English. What else? Well, it's very useful because we can understand media. We can find a lot of music. We can find a lot of movies that are in English, and in that case, if we speak English, we are going to understand it better. We also get opportunities to study because we can find a lot of opportunities in different schools thanks to speaking English, and at the end, we can find some benefits to work because we can find a lot of job opportunities if we speak English. Now, this is the situation. Let's imagine a perfect world, and a perfect world that. So what this picture is trying to communicate is that people start learning English. After a couple of months or maybe a year, they become fluent speakers. That's in a perfect world. But the real problem, the situation is that it is not like that, right? Yeah, it's not like that because a lot of people struggle with learning English. Some people at a particular area, for example, grammar, for example, vocabulary, for example, listening skills, reading skills, or some other people at English in general, you know? Now, there are some things called motivation. This is very important, the relevance of motivations. Why? Because it's like a vice circle, you know? So people want to start studying English, so they join a school, they join a course, and after some time, they realize that they are not learning English appropriately. Why? Well, maybe they are not receiving the right approach. And then what happens next? They feel unmotivated, and sometimes they just drop English out. And what happened next? They want to start studying English again, but they want to start from scratch. That means that they want to start in level 1 again. And that reminds me of something that happens to me because a lot of students that I have in level 1, where I teach, come from a high school where English was taught, and they say, "Oh, I had an English class when I was in high school, but to be honest, I would like to start over again. I would like to be part of level 1 again." And I'm like, why would you like to be in level 1 again if you had already received some English education previously? And this is maybe because they didn't receive the right approach and didn't learn appropriately. Okay, so this is the situation, this is the problem. Students struggling with learning English. And that is going to lead professors into something which is looking for alternatives or looking for different teaching approaches. And in fact, this project is about that. It's about analyzing the two different approaches that I'm going to present, which is the inductive approach and the deductive approach. Now, I am going to talk about my my teaching experience. I have observed that a lot of the students struggle with English in different areas. Some students find, as I told you, vocabulary very difficult, but they find some techniques like using some flashcards or something like that. There are some other students that find listening skills very difficult, and at the end they find some techniques to improve their listening skills, like listening to music in English or watching some movies. But the main problem that I have observed is that students struggle with learning grammar. I consider that grammar is the most difficult part for students. And I have someone else who says that these two authors said there are so many obstacle rules and exceptions that make it difficult for learners to understand this aspect of language. I mean, listening skills are difficult, writing skills are difficult, but grammar skills are particularly the most difficult ones. Now, for some people, learning English, well, not learning English a little is more than enough to have their future solved. So to a lot of people, I have said, hey, do you speak English? And they say, just a little. I can speak English. I understand what you say, but that's enough for me. I'm going to tell you a short story. I was talking to a friend of a friend the other day, and she told me that she got a really important job. And she told me about the responsibilities that she has, the main responsibilities, of course. And she told me that she has to keep in touch with clients through email. And I told her, well, your English must be very good, right? And what she said, I was expecting an answer like, yes, of course, I'm a really good English speaker. But no, what she said was, no, it's not that good, but it's enough for my work because I only need to understand the email a little, and I use the translator a little, and then I reply to the client. And it's not like that. Why? Because understanding grammar and understanding English at all is very important. It's not just like, I understand English a little. One more time, it's not just me who says that, but here we have another author who confirms that. He says, although there are many different opinions and conflicting findings on grammar teaching, grammar is considered as an essential part of language teaching. That means that English grammar is a must. It's something that we have to understand because it's not enough just to understand English a little or just to comprehend what the other person said if we cannot produce, if we cannot employ grammar appropriately. Okay, now let's move to the objective. Well, the main objective here is to know the effectiveness of both the inductive and the deductive approach, the deductive teaching and inductive teaching, while to enhance the students' grammar ability, but particularly when learning 4 different topics, which is simple present, simple past, present continuous, and present perfect. In addition, we want to know which method, which approach is better when teaching these 4 topics. So we're going to analyze the effectiveness of both, and at the end, we are going to realize which one is the most appropriate one. Now, this is going to be a stepping stone for professors. Why? Because they are going to be able to become better at teaching. Why? Because they are going to be able to identify some kind of a student with some kind of problem, and they can use the appropriate approach according to their needs. And not just that, because a contribution to English learning is going to be made. An educational bridge is expected to be gap. What is that gap that we're talking about? It is the difficulty of learning grammar, the problem that a lot of people find, that a lot of people face when they start learning English. And additionally to that, it is going to be a little contribution to professors from other languages. But this is just like an additional one, you know? Why an additional one? Because the different professors from different languages might be encouraged to use those approaches because those approaches might work to their languages as well. Professors who are teaching Spanish, who are teaching Portuguese, who are teaching German, I don't know, any other languages, but that's just like an additional one. Okay, I've got three research questions. The first one, as I told you, what is the effectiveness of the inductive to enhance students' grammar ability when learning the following topics: simple present, simple past, present continuous, present perfect? The next one, exactly the same, but according to the deductive method, the effectiveness of the deductive teaching to enhance grammar stability when teaching these four topics. And at the end, we are going to identify which teaching method is the most effective or the most appropriate when we are teaching particularly these topics. Okay, now a lot of people would say, but why? Why do you want to get this project? Why do you want to make this experiment? Well, it's very simple. My main motivation is to help learners on their process, to make students understand more easily English. But what else? It is also to make professors help learners, because I am not the professor of every single student, you know? So there are too many professors who might want to help learners, and they can use these techniques, they can use these approaches. Also to motivate other language professors. As I told you, you can work for different other professors from different other languages to improve their teaching. Okay, I've got some research from different people, and I realized that a lot of people have had experiments on inductive and deductive teaching. The first person that I have here is an author called Ken Glaser. She wanted to know the effectiveness of these two methods. So during one semester, she ran an experiment and she analyzed the different areas, for example, vocabulary, for example, listening, for example, reading, for example, grammar. And at the end, she realized that the inductive method was better. But then, on the other hand, we have this person, this author, whose name is Katia, and that person claims that deductive approaches are very helpful. They are very useful. Why? Because they help students to understand particularly grammar more easily. But then we have this other author, which is Andreevna, and she conducted an experiment and she decided to use both approaches. And at the end, the results demonstrated that the inductive method was a little bit better, but just a little. It was not that big, that different. Finally, we have these two authors. They ran an experiment on 105 students. They separated groups into two groups. The first one received the inductive approach. The second one, the deductive approach. They use pre and post tests, and it's interesting because in the pre-test the results were practically the same. They were very similar, but the post test shows some significant favor to inductive methods. Okay, basically these people were the ones who motivated me to run this experiment, to have this project. In addition to Katia, why? Because this person is a person who I think is very committed to his work. Why? Because he says that language teachers must choose the best method to form well-prepared students. Okay, now let's move to the methodology. It's going to be a classic experiment. It's a post-test only. I am not going to apply pre-test, just post-test with non-equivalent design groups. This is the way we're...
2 more minutes, sorry.
No problem. Okay, let's speed this up. So we are going to have 2A1 levels, both from CUSEA, from University of Guadalajara, where I work. Both groups are comprised by 30 college students, among men and women. The age is around 18 and 20. I don't want to confirm just right now. Oh, they are exactly between 18 and 20. Why? Because the semester is going to start in a couple weeks, in August. Yeah, so until August, I'm gonna know the real age. During one semester, one group is going to receive only the inductive approach and the other one, the deductive approach, but both applied on those 4 topics that I told you: simple present, simple past, present continuous, and present perfect. What are the instruments that I am going to use? Well, they're very simple. The first one is going to be a book, the book that we use at school. It's called Interchange 1. It's the 5th edition. And the second one is going to be my post-test, the post-test that are going to be applied a week after each grammar topic is taught. I teach simple present, and after a week, I have the post-test. I teach simple past, and after a week, I have a post-test, and so on. And finally, the procedure, well, as I have already told you, we have 2 sample groups. Both are A1 level groups. So during one semester, students receive a lot of content, a lot of information. So we're going to focus only on those 4 topics: simple past, simple present, present continuous, present perfect. And we are going to use those 2 approaches of those 2 different groups. What happens then? Well, after we are having the grammar topic, they have the post-test. And once the results are done, we are going to be able to compare them so we can read about the effectiveness of each of them through collected data. And here we have my references, everyone. There they are. Wow, just in time, right?
Yes, safe.
All right.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you very much. And yes, we have time for questions and comments. And the first one is Dr. Ramos. Go ahead, Maggie.
All right.
Sorry. And it sounds like you are my nephew, but no, you are not. Or are you?
No.
Okay. Guillermo, I need to express 3 concerns, and all of them are targeted for you to improve your thesis and professionalism as well. Yes?
Mm.
First one is, yesterday we were talking about sources that we can trust.
Yes.
And I don't know, but I have not heard the sources that you have used, and it seems that they come from the sources that we were talking yesterday, like, so be careful about that.
Okay.
Number 1. Number 2, I don't know your written work, but the presentation was like very opinionated, let's say,
Okay.
because it was scarcely supported by theory.
Okay.
By theory that it is like worth it, I believe. Yes. And finally, my concern is all the tenses that you are trying to have there. Yes. And as my fourth comment is like, okay, it seems like a very good methodological framework in regards of the quasi-experimental design with your groups, yes, except for the fact of the different tenses that you are planning to work with. Probably you need to reduce them, and probably you would like to take into consideration one present and one past, or only the present tenses, or something like that. That is for a discussion with you and your thesis director. Okay? Yes? Other than those are my comments.
Okay, thank you very much for your comment. Yeah, I'm gonna work on that for my following presentation, which is within 1 year, right? Okay, so I'm so sorry. Just I had a question. Your suggestion is just to reduce the topics. Maybe instead of having 4 topics, maybe 2 would be enough.
I believe yes. Yes, but once more, it's for you to talk it out with your thesis director. Okay.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Thank you, Maggie. And now, Ariel, would you like to add some comments, or can we can we comment on the topic? And afterwards, since you are the thesis director, we'll leave you to the end. Yes, do you agree? So, Dr. Sony, yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Teresa. Well, Guillermo, the topic is quite interesting as we like grammar, so that's like a good point on the presentation. As Dr. Maggie said, and I agree with her, you have many topics, and so you have many variables, right? Because you have the effect of these teaching approaches, you have the grammar topics. I would even say that only one grammar topic should be enough for this study, only one, and that's it, because you have to narrow down the scope, the topics, because remember, you have to teach you have to teach and then test and then analyze the data, right? So imagine to do that 4 times, it would be like, maybe just like a lot, you know? If you want to keep your social life healthy, maybe you should reduce the grammar topics, okay? Now, there is something called meta studies, that it is kind of a literature review on a specific topic. There are many meta studies on this topic, on comparing deductive and inductive approaches to teaching grammar. So maybe, and in these ones, we have many answers. We know many answers to some questions that you may be asking yourself about the study. So I think you should go and look for meta studies regarding deductive, inductive approach on teaching grammar, and you will find that we know many things about the advantages, the disadvantages, features, how it helps in certain areas and how it doesn't help. So I think you should do that, so you can try to be more specific about what you are expecting, and you can even make hypotheses about what you expect with the training and the comparison, okay? So I think that's it. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Sonny. And well, I agree with my colleagues, with Dr. Ramos and Dr. Castro. Yeah, I think maybe you're Tesnier's lover, because yeah, Lucien Tesnier was in love with verbs. I understand, because the verb is the center of the universe. I know, and I agree with you. However, yes, 4 tenses, it's too much, especially because you haven't justified why those tenses and not one single one. Simple present, as we saw yesterday, could be more than enough, since it is used for everything. I mean, in different text genres, you have a simple present with different pragmatic values, with different pragmatic goals. So if I think simple present could be more than enough. But if you want to do some, I mean, I don't know, a contrastive or something, yeah, maybe the presence, but simple present, simple past, the continuous, which is just like another interesting topic from a linguistic, especially from a syntactic and an aspectual point of view, and the present perfect. I mean, it's too much, and I think no, it's more than enough. Moreover, you have included both sides of the grammar. I mean, it's not only inductive grammar but also deductive grammar. So as Dr. Sony said, there are too many variables there. I would recommend one single tense very exhaustively, and yes, yeah, you can contrast both methods. I think that we missed a little bit more of the literature review, because so much has been said about these 2 methods, advantages, as Sonny said, advantages, disadvantages, results on specific topics, etc. So yeah, it is important you consider these previous studies, but also the theoretical literature that has been written about this topic, about these 2 topics, I mean, inductive and deductive grammar. And I am not so sure if your methodology is going to be quasi-experimental, since I don't know. I don't know if you will have to check it, but I'm not quite sure, or if it's the best that fits to your plans. But if it's pre-experimental, it could be also very well done. I mean, you don't need two groups, one control group, another experimental group, and to measure both variables in both. I think it's too much. Maybe a pre-experimental could be more than enough, one single group, and see what happens. And well, that's those are my comments. No, my last comment, the instrument for your methodology, you say that your treatment is the book Interchange. I didn't even know that existed. I learned, well, I tried to learn with that book in my 20s, but yeah, the book, but it's not the book, it's the activities that you're proposing, etc. So you could explain a little bit more, and even you could feed, or you could enrich those activities proposed in the book with others that you can conceive from the experts on both topics. And now I'm going to zip it, and the stage is all yours, Ariel. Dr. Vasquez Carranza, go ahead.
Hi, yeah, thank you. Thank you, Michelle, for the presentation. Yes, I think, yeah, we need to work on particularly on the methodology, because I mean, now that when a topic is studied a lot, and your topic is looking at something that has been studied before many times. So in the things that you need to pay attention even more is in the details of the methodology of previous studies, to see whether you can maybe replicate something, or maybe do something similar that didn't work in the previous one, or things like that that can refine the thing. I agree that there are too many sentences. Yeah, I mean, the process, I know you know that the process for your the to establish what your topic will be, we was more like was actually a deductive process from a very general idea that you had. We were working on what things you could do. And well, but I mean, I think a good progress is that now, I mean, it's clear that you want to do this contrast between these two ways of teaching. And but yeah, I think that we need to work on the methodology. And thank you for the comments of my colleagues, that they are very helpful. And yeah, also I mean, the materials, yeah, it's not the book as such. It's more like the process that you will follow when you're gonna teach deductively or inductively, apart from the material, but also, all the process that you will say this and then that, all the planning and all that. But
like mentioning the activities, right? Instead of just the book,
yeah,
just the activities. Okay.
yeah, exactly. But I mean, we work with that. Don't worry. We'll work
Okay.
with that. And yeah, okay. Thank you, and thank you also for the 6 a.m. meetings. But yeah, next semester it will be normal time.
Mexico's time.
Mexico's time, exactly. Thanks.
Thank you, Ariel. Dankeschön. And I think we deserve a break, right? I mean, no sé, pee break or popo break or whatever you want break, a coffee break. So I'm going to stop the recording. I should have stopped this before. And Sonia.
Oh, I was to start sharing now or wait?
No, wait, no. Now, yeah. I think the next presentation is in charge of Emma Angeline Marchesini Escobedo, and the title is Teaching English Through Short Stories. The thesis director is Dr. Jerry Mockford, or Gerard Mockford. So the stage is all yours, Angeline. Your microphone.
Sorry, I started talking and I didn't notice. So as you can see, my title is really general and still a work in progress. But the beauty of this title is that I kind of changed my topic and it still works. So I think I can keep it until it stops working or until I have a more precise idea of what I'm doing. So like Dr. Quintero said, is teaching English through short stories, which I'm still doing that. I'm just focusing on different things. And my thesis advisor is Dr. Gerard Mockford. It changed, right? The
slide.
Okay,
Yes.
sorry. Okay, so my introduction, I'm gonna talk a little bit of what I was doing before I changed my topic. And I was researching a lot about how short stories motivate students to learn. And it's easier to learn when you're motivated, right? And my previous topic was focused on motivation, but it's really hard to measure. So as you have seen as teachers, sometimes students get to a level with the regular English classes, but then there's not extra information for them to actually are able to become communicative competence. And since we know communicative competence is something inside a specific community, well, it's really subjective, right? According to which community they want to belong and everything. So literature helps us gain community competence because we focus on specific communities. And the use of short stories is, well, I'm not gonna say better way, but yeah, I guess it's an easier way to achieve that goal since it has authentic material. Short stories are made for native speakers, so they don't use simplified language, and it's something that you can actually get authentic material. They're full of culture, and you can get cultural awareness and intercultural awareness while you discuss about them. You're able to think critically when you're analyzing the story, and since literature is you read it for pleasure, not really to learn something, is motivating as in itself. It's something you read because you want to do it, and you can enjoy more like doing things you like. And because of the diversity of the stories, you get to teach whole language approach. You can have many different activities, one like for them to speak like discussions. You can ask them to produce something in writing, and well, obviously you read, or you can listen to the story because sometimes you can find a lot of the short stories online on YouTube. So my research questions are, does the focus on explicit ethnographic or sociolinguistic questions facilitate students' communicative competence and involvement with an understanding of the stories they read? And does reading and discussing short stories from within the context of explicit ethnographic or sociolinguistic background facilitate communicative competence and acquisition of cultural awareness? My justification is, it is a content-based short story interpretation class that is intended for future English teachers and translators. So because of what they're gonna be working later on in life, they need a high level of intercultural awareness and communicative competence. Language students can become aware of appropriate forms through frequent exposure to authentic material. We can see a lot more forms while we're reading short stories than actually what we usually teach in English classes. Prospective language teachers especially require in-deep awareness of the norms of target culture, literal in general, but short stories in particular, because of the brevity, can be shortcut to achieving cultural insight. This is because there's a lot of studies also about novels or other literary genres like poems, but poems sometimes become really hard to understand and novels are too long. And with short stories, we can have different topics. Well, we have more and more diversity, themes, settings, and we can actually see different cultures because they're short. You can cover more during a semester. My background of the study, I know I'm gonna have comments here because most of my names are the ones you guys mentioned we shouldn't use, but there were the articles I found at the time, and I'm gonna keep researching more articles. So the reason I have this first article by Iman is because he's talking basically on what I was basing my review of the literature. He's talking about all the reasons why short stories are beneficial for teaching English. He has examples. Well, he said that is one of the most motivating things to do in English classes, use short stories. And some of his examples are that they're authentic material, cultural enrichment, language advancement, and personal growth. And he also mentions there are benefits for teachers because of the length, they're more practical, they're things that students can work on their own, that they don't need as much assistance. You can teach English as a whole, and they're of different interest and taste. During their study, they were trying to see if short stories will help the students do better in writing and speaking. And they found out that in speaking, it works especially with fluency, and in writing, they gain a lot more vocabulary. Those were their results. My second article that I have here, Pragmatics and the Teaching of Literature, looks at literature as an act of communication, since literature is read for enjoyment. So they were looking at literature, and they were looking at a novel, and this one in particular. They were looking at a novel, and they were looking at different speech acts from the novel, and they were trying to classify it. In those speech acts, we were noticing the main character was saying questions, but she wasn't expecting an answer. So it was a pragmatic study, and the study concluded that when we learn language to handle reality, literature is an imitation of reality. So since literature, they're imitating what we do in regular life, if you learn how to answer, how to talk through literature, how they're doing it there, you're going to be able to, I don't know, like take that to your real life. And when a little kid is asking you things, you know if you're supposed to answer or not. That was one of the examples in the article. And the reason I like this is because it made me think of a short story I used in class by O. Henry, which is called The Ransom of Red Sheep, which is really relevant. This was about a novel. It was also Anne of Gables, but it could work with one of my short stories. And then the third article I have here is a quantitative and qualitative analysis of the effects of culture and language on Arab students' response to authentic literature in English. I know the journals might not be the good ones. In this study, they look at language and culture. Well, they say language and culture can have a profound effect on comprehension. If they don't know enough about the culture, there's gonna be an interference, and they're not gonna understand the story completely. It's not gonna be possible for them to, well, if you ask them to interpret it or maybe to give you a summary of it, they won't be able to tell you the whole picture. It will be fragmented or just little pieces if they don't understand the culture. And this happens to me with a couple of stories I do in my classes, that the way they speak, the setup and everything is a little bit complicated, and my students are not familiar with it. And usually they don't like the story. But once we start discussing the story, they're able to understand it, and they like it a lot more because I kind of give them a little bit of background. So your cultural background really matters when you're reading literature. Is the way you're gonna understand it. This study uses reader's response theory as well. So reader's response theory tells you that the reader kind of is in charge of the writing now, because it's their understanding, and each person has a different perspective. So discussions could be more fulfilling in a way, because you get different perspectives from the story. So if the students don't have the background culture, they're not gonna understand it. I can think of some stories that I teach. Right now, I'm going to say John Bart's Nicey Journey, because he talks a lot about previous books published and also has some philosophical theories. So sometimes it's really hard to understand, and you need to know more about that to understand the story. My 4th article I added here is the role of emotions in reading literary text, fact or fiction. Well, like I said before, I was kind of focusing on motivation, and I kind of decided not to because it's really hard to measure. But I do notice that when students get more involved with the reading because they can relate, it's easier for them to comprehend. And this is what this article is telling us about. When you're emotionally involved in reading, will help them improve the comprehension of the short story when students are emotionally involved. It also talks about being emotionally involved helps them comprehend without necessarily teaching explicit some literary elements like irony, foreshadowing, theme. Like students will be able to see them, find them without having to be taught explicitly because they're actually getting into the story. And I have 3 stories that could work for this. Is The Cushion of Time by David Updike, Athena Podolsky, and oh yeah, and A Small Good Thing by Raymond Kerber. So my last article in Graphical Communication and Praxis in the Literature Classroom does a cultural sensitive study where they analyze, well, they analyze through ethnographic of communication this story, and it is easier to understand the story when you decipher like little by little. And I will also say that this will work for the one I mentioned before, The Nicey Journey by John Bart, and also for The Death of Mrs. Shear by Joyce Carlotz, because using the ethnographic approach helps us see the culture little by little and understand it better. So that's what I have for my background studies. And my main reference, I have the Ethnography of Communication and Introduction by Muriel Seville Troik because it's easier to understand her. She basically has all the concepts that Delheims published in a much easier way to understand her. And when I was doing my review of the literature, most of my concepts, I took them from there. And I took a lot of ideas of what I wanted to do with ethnography and literature through her book. And
Mark, you have 2 minutes.
oh, okay. And Intercultural Competence and Pragmatics by Gila Schauer, because again, I look at some pragmatic studies that I would like to try, and my concepts are taken from this book. So, and finally, The Reader Detects the Poem by Louis Rosenblatt. Well, this is the way I teach my class with reader's response theory, which you can find in that book. And reader response theory tells us that literature is experience. What you understand is the experience you have, and it also gives you experience in that culture, in that world. So you have to separate the story from the text, arguing that each participant has a different perception of the text. And that's why I have this last one. And my methodology, I currently teach a content-based short story course at the University of Chihuahua in the major of lengua inglesa. They're starting to become English teacher and English translator, so they need to know about the English culture. And what better way than with short stories? Usually the semester, well, they're in second semester. Usually I have around 10 to 20 students. I'm not sure how many I'm going to have next semester. And they're college students, so 18 to 25 years old, maybe. The class is usually taught with reading response theory, but I would like to incorporate some of the readings I've been finding, like the ethnographic approach or some pragmatic or sociolinguistic approaches to help the students understand the short stories better. I always do open-ended questions at the beginning, and they have to read at home. And then in class, we just do the discussion. But with these exercises, that will be part of my methodology. And I was thinking that I also might need to record them, but I'm not sure yet. I'm still kind of deciding what I want to do with my methodology. What else? Well,
2 more minutes, Angeline.
I think that's it. I kind of just summarized what I had in the methodology. So I guess, well, it's reflective analytical approach using qualitative methods, but I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to do. So I think that's it. And that's just my references. So that's it.
Thank you very much, Angeline. And we have, now it's time for comments and questions. So yes, Dr. Ramos, be my guest.
Sorry. Sorry. Well, first of all, because I love literature, I also teach literature since like probably 4 years ago. But it is my passion too. Yes. And first of all, could you please go back to the research questions? And of course, your research questions are going to affect the kind of methodology that you are going to use, yes? So does the focus, etc., etc. First of all, they are too long. And then second of all, we're going to receive only 2 kinds of answer, yes or no, end of the story. Yes? So what about if you change them to how the focus, I don't know, it's just like a first suggestion, because at the same time the question is like long, implying that you have like different things there, like explicit ethnographic, or so one or the other, or social linguistic questions facilitate student communicative competence. So in general, I believe that if you concentrate on writing like good research questions, they are going to guide the whole methodology and the whole study. So yes, I can see that your interest is literature, and that you have read about how to teach literature in the EFL classroom, and that you are an expert in teaching literature in your classroom, but that you would like to take advantage of that, not only interest, not only that you are teaching that group, not only that you have that group to teach them, but how you are going to do it. Now, that on the one hand. On the other hand, what kinds of short stories are you introducing your students with? Are they modern stories? Are they old stories?
I don't think I have that many modern, but I think most of them are 20th century, because like I do Hemingway, I do James Derber, I do Joyce Carlotta, I do many authors.
Okay. So you cannot choose only like, I don't know, 5 stories, just to give you an idea. Yes. And then work with them, I don't know, using the communicative approach. But not really, is the question is, what do you want to do with those stories? Like facilitate the communicative competence, or because you're talking about interculturality, and you can go for interculturality. Like, for example, comparing their understanding of Ernest Hemingway with, I don't know, Octavio Paz. yes, written in English. I don't know, I'm just giving an example. I'm not saying that you have to do that, but also like saying, okay, preparing your questions like really well so that they go and discuss with the interculturality, work with interculturality and see how they understand the culture of the other, we say, yes?
I don't know if this is relevant, but there's a short story by Ernest Hemingway called The Old Man at the Bridge, and you can tell the conversation that he's writing about was taken in Spanish, was done in Spanish, and is set up in Spain, but the short story is in English. I don't know if that will be kind of like interculturality because of what you're saying.
Well, not necessarily, but you can work with things like that, yes? Probably it is more the kind of questions or tasks that you use to work with the literary piece, yes? And it is probably you, the one who would like to observe her own teaching. It is my perception that you would like to see how your own teaching of literature is working in terms of interculturality. And you can do that by asking your students how they felt about that part of the teaching, of the intercultural, the task and the text, how they work together, yes? Because it's you selecting the materials, you preparing the tasks and materials, and it is my sensation that it's you who you yourself would like to observe. I don't know, and it is a question for you. You have to answer it. Yes.
I've been teaching. Oh, sorry.
And at the same time, I send you some texts in the chat that you can also use and see if they can help you reflect on what you want. Now, yes, give your answer. Sorry, I interrupted.
No, I was just gonna mention that last part you said that is me. I have noticed with certain stories that I struggle a lot and they're full of culture and my students don't know anything about it. And last semester when we were taking the class with Dr. Quintero, I did many of my assignments in that class. And I noticed that my students understood the classes better because of them. And that's where I got the idea to change it a little bit to that.
Well, there you are. So maybe it is the tasks and the texts. And then you can survey your students about how you prepare the tasks and the tests. And with that, you have like, I don't know, probably you say, oh, Ernest Hemingway is difficult, I don't know, Shakespeare is difficult, etc. Right? Emily Dickinson, whoever. And then you say, oh, I'm going to prepare only 5 texts, 5 tasks with an intercultural point of view. Yes? And then I am going to prepare a journal or a survey to see how my students felt about working with this, the text and the task, and probably my own teaching. Yes? And end of the story.
Yeah, thank you.
And it is more like an action research in that way. Just saying, you already have a really beautiful literature review or marco teórico that you can exploit. Please don't disregard it. It is useful, and talk about it with your thesis director. But first of all, you need to talk to yourself, because you need to feel passionate about what you're doing. You need to feel that what you're doing is going to be useful either for you or for your students. And why not for other teachers? What if by reading your thesis, I also change my own teaching in regards to teaching literature? Yes?
Yes, thank you. That's gonna be really helpful.
Okay. And I sent some literature.
Thank you, Maggie. Thank you, Dr. Ramos. And are there any more questions or comments? Yes, Dr. Mockford, of course. Your microphone, Jerry.
If we could just go back to those research questions. What I wanted to say was that I think Angeline's done a really nice, started a really nice journey on her thesis work that she's been exploring, she's been reading around, she hasn't been rushing to write chapters or anything, which I think is what the whole thing about doing a thesis is sounding out things, trying to see what areas are interesting, appropriate. And I think that's what we talked about the other day, was very much, and I think these research questions, although they need narrowing, at the moment, I would leave them as they are, because there's still the idea, is it ethnographic? Is it social linguistic? The idea of communicative competence. So I think very much how she's been working is very much trying to tease out exactly the relationship between short stories. And you know, looking at, say, the context of ethnographic. So we think of ethnographic relating to the student's own cultural environment, how they interact with the language, how they interact with the target language, their social linguistic background. So in that sense, I would I recognize that they need narrowing, but I would still, especially in this semester, I think Anthony's done a really nice job trying to work out for herself where she wants to go. And I'd probably see the next semester where she'd narrow it down very much exactly where to go. Obviously, the key terms here are going to be communicative competence. What is communicative competence, but relating that obviously to culture. So that's what I would say, because I feel that she started doing her thesis in the way that I think everyone should, you know, not rushing to start producing, but very much reflecting, teasing out, etc. So that's what I would probably say at the moment.
Thank you very much, Jerry. Yes, you're absolutely right. We can see that the progress, no? I mean, and the topic, I think it's very original. I mean, the fact of working with literature in order to work with cultural awareness or any topic, and short stories specifically, because it's true that sometimes we work with a single novel. In this case, you can work with just like several texts. That's amazing. I'm obsessed with authentic material, and this authentic material is beautiful. So and yes, Maggie recommends Terry Eagleton. I also recommend that book in particular. It's very interesting. Having said that, I think it's time for Virginia Isabel Berumen to present her thesis with using audiovisual input to develop pragmatic competence in indirect speech acts in EFL courses for teenagers and adults. And of course, the thesis director is Dr. Jerry Mockford. So go ahead, Isabel.
Good morning, everybody. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, the name hasn't changed. Thank you, Dr. Sara. Using audiovisual input to develop pragmatic competence in indirect speech acts in EFL courses for teenagers and adults is my topic. And well, as you mentioned, Dr. Mockford is my thesis director. Well, first of all, this study deals with pragmatics. And what is pragmatics? Well, pragmatics means the study of language in context. And what is important here, as John Coring and Kenneth Fordyce said, well, maybe you can see the book, I have it here. But the important thing is that you consider the situation, the background, and the contextual aspects of language, of the context. So you need to know of course, the situation, you need to know each other, the relationship between you and a person, and what you have been saying previously, so you don't get lost in a conversation, for example. Well, why do I consider this important? Well, we need to consider that explaining grammar, new vocabulary every class is really important, but we also need to consider the way you use this language. So to help students use this language appropriately according to different contexts. And since we are living in a country where English is taught as a foreign language, and many times we as teachers or our textbooks are the main sources of input for them, we need to provide them with other materials, for example, authentic audiovisual materials. Well, my objective is this one, to help develop a student's pragmatic competence by using authentic audiovisual materials as input. And the idea is that students will use indirect language to be able to understand and produce their own language utterances. What I have noticed is that they struggle, for example, with requests and refusals, because sometimes they don't know if they are too polite or impolite. And well, I will focus on indirectness. And well, some examples of audiovisual input are movie and series clips, as well as online videos. My study, well, has these three research questions. The first one is, how can EFL teenage and adult learners develop their pragmatic competence in intermediate and advanced levels of English proficiency? Second, how can students be helped to identify indirect speech acts in authentic audiovisual materials to avoid pragmatic linguistic failure, which means when students don't have enough resources to express themselves? And the third one, what is the effect of authentic audiovisual materials on learners' pragmatic competence to identify and use speech acts? Well, to continue, well, my justification, who will benefit? Well, as I said, well, English intermediate and advanced level students, I will focus here, as well as teachers interested in pragmatics. And well, why? Because I think teachers will find another way to teach pragmatics to students, because they need more opportunities to develop this competence in class and other sources of input as authentic audiovisual materials. Well, talking about previous research, I found, for example, the first one, it deals with authentic materials, for example, using short stories versus video clips to improve upper intermediate EFL student sociopragmatic knowledge. In this study, well, Heydari and company, well, they state that using audiovisual materials is a way to bring learners closer to the speech of speakers of the target language. And they demonstrated that oral production of requests and refusals improved by using this video, but also by providing explicit instruction. The second one deals with instruction. So the effect of instruction on learners' pragmatic awareness, in this case, this study was focused on refusals. Alcon and Guzman here explore different resources, and well, they were talking about using authentic material, video, in this case, in pedagogical interventions. And well, that they determine that this source of input makes a difference in pragmatic linguistics, the resources students have to express themselves, and sociopragmatic awareness, so how socially appropriate is language. The third one, well, is about audiovisual input as well. So it's using audiovisual programs as authentic language input for second language acquisitions. This one's about informal settings. What Barani did, well, he offered different sources of input, cartoons, movies, and news broadcasts to different groups. And well, they decided the one that they wanted. It was informal, but he concluded at the end that if you have a research objective, a clear objective, and if you choose a level in which you can use this can be used with pedagogical interventions. The next one, well, is about pragmatic competence. So it was about the impact of instruction based on movie and TV series clips. Well, focus on speech acts. In this case, there was an experiment designed. One group was exposed to audiovisual input, the other was exposed to text. This was based or focused, on request and suggestion speech acts, and they found that this input improved learners' production of these speech acts. And the fifth one, well, talking about developing competences, in this case, the potential of Netflix, YouTube, Prime Video, and this streaming content. In here, Rauch analyzes the benefits of using audiovisual streaming content to develop different competences. And there was a chapter about pragmatics in which she concludes that the combination of audiovisual materials and pragmatic instructions leads to positive results. But she considers and recognizes that more research is needed. And I agree with her. So talking about my references, well, here I have all my references and I will highlight some of them. And well, some important ideas here. For example, the first, Bachman describes pragmatics as the relationship between utterances and the functions that you intend while you perform your utterances. So you speak and there is an intention and a function related to it. Also, it's important to consider cross-cultural pragmatics because we have speech acts, we have functions that vary. And as Kishki says, they vary according to different cultures. And if you don't understand each other, this could lead to cultural breakdowns or pragmatic failures. Well, as I said before, pragmatic competence is important because you need to have this ability to produce and understand what is appropriate to the L2 sociocultural context, which leads to sociolinguistic competence. So Canal and Swain, well, they talk about these sociocultural rules that all speakers have, and they are defined by speakers, and you need to understand the specific context. And as well, pragmalinguistics, well, as I said, these are the resources provided by a language for understanding particular expressions, illocutions. And well, it's important to understand, for example, that directness and indirectness are these kind of resources. And well, pragmalinguistic failure, as I said, this is a problem. The problem is if you don't understand what a speaker originally intends, well, talking about L2. If you don't understand correctly, well, you misunderstand the message. So it's important to offer contextual cues so you understand what the speaker originally intended. Well, and as I said, indirect speech acts is what I want to focus on. And well, here what happens is that you mention something indirectly and you probably say more than you intend with the original message. And you only understand if there is enough background information and linguistic or non-linguistic signs. And in this case, audiovisual input can help us to have these contextual cues. So for example, Fernandez Guerra and Martinez Flor, they were comparing course books and films. And they realized that films were more contextualized and they were more natural expressions on them. And finally, well, to talk about my methodology. Well, in this case, I was thinking about a mixed methodology. The context is Prolex, the language school where I worked. And well, I need to define the next part, well, because every month I change groups. So it's important to talk to my authorities about this. I know about that, but right now my idea is more or less around 20 students, 2 groups, 1 intermediate group, 1 advanced group. Their ages, well, it's an adults course, but their ages usually are between 15 and 30. I have a lot of high school and university students, but there are also workers, so sometimes they are older. And well, the instruments that I'm planning to use. First of all, a background questionnaire. In here, I'm interested in knowing about their exposure to English, if they are exposed to English, if they watch videos themselves, or what do they do outside the classroom. The next one is a MDCT, multiple choice discord completion task. In this case, you provide them with a situation and they have different options. So for example, there is a conversation and they need to choose what is the best way to follow up that conversation. So that is with options. Another instrument that I was thinking about was a written discourse completion task. In this case, it's similar to the previous one, but instead of giving them the options, they have the opportunity to write the responses that they believe are the most appropriate according to the situation or context. And well, this is like about awareness, but about production, which is something I'm interested too. I was thinking about a role play, and well, on this role play, I will observe students, and well, that would be the qualitative part as well as the previous one. That would be the qualitative part of the study. I was thinking that the multiple choice discourse completion task could be more quantitative because I could maybe compare with some graphs, some numbers, the type of responses that they choose. But well, to finish, this role play I think could help me to see if they are really able to produce indirect speech acts, as I said. And well, that was it. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Isabel. So, yeah, thank you. It's time for questions and comments. So, yeah, Dr. Ramos, be my guest.
Hi, Isabel. Well, it is a very interesting piece of research with a methodological framework, like already well structured. Probably you have to get rid of some details there because of time constrictions at the end. Congratulations on that. And only one suggestion there is for your role plays, and I believe that Dr. Sonny may agree with me. You can use artificial intelligence with simulations, and then students respond to that simulation. And what you're going to observe is it is basically the reactions towards this pragmatic competence. Of course, we're going to prepare your I don't know, the role play of the artificial intelligence, and then you need to see how students respond to that. Basically, that is my suggestion.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maggie. And Dr. Sonny, yes, do you have a question or comment or something?
Yeah, sure.
Go ahead.
Isabel, I really like the topic and the study. So I have just comments. The first one, I think it is that maybe you can find, and you have to discuss this with Dr. Cherry, but you can find a way to merge this written discourse completion test and the role play. So you may have only one instrument, and it is possible because I did it in my thesis work. So you can do that to only have one instrument, one very complete instrument where you can actually like diminish the disadvantages that the written DCT have and that the role play may have. So you can discuss it with Dr. Cherry. And also, this is just like a comment. I was thinking that as you have the audiovisual input, it would be just very nice that you analyze these linguistic cues. I mean, the pragmalinguistic aspect of the speech acts, but also you have the chance to analyze the non-linguistic cues, such as like body language. That it is something that hasn't been explored regarding how we produce speech acts, but that it is, and even for example, intonation, right? Or some prosodic features. So I think that you have many things to analyze at the same time. So you must be very careful about what you are going to analyze, right? I don't know if you mentioned it, but are you going to also include the sociopragmatic part of the speech acts?
Well, I was like rushing a lot, I know. Yeah, I mentioned about that because I consider it's important what is socially appropriate, not to different situations.
Okay, so I think you have to discuss with Dr. Jerry if you want to include these non-linguistic cues that are also part of, because I mean, if you have the chance to if you have the chance to help your students also be able to observe these cues, right? That we don't teach in the ELT class. So that's something you have to discuss later. Okay, but that's
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Isabel.
Thank you.
Congrats. I really like it. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tony. And yes, Dr. Mockford, of course.
I want to congratulate Isabel for doing that presentation in the speed she did, because when we checked it the other day, I said, Isabel, you're not going to make it, but she did. So she covered a lot of ground, and yeah, there were things like social pragmatics which could have been detailed, but because of time, I think what's really good about what she's doing is if you're looking at, say, videos, you're looking at speech acts over several turns, which I think is important, because so often speech acts, we just see them individually. So I think that should come out in the research. And like Sonny says, that should also pick up on the non-verbal, which again is something which isn't looked at. Although we do have a problem there with the way, say, Mexican students interpret non-verbal, how they use non-verbal. Is it the same as, let's say, people from the US? But that would be a challenge to look at. And I feel that the role play should help you also to see how speech acts develop over more than one turn, which I think is important, rather than just teaching the speech act of requesting, rather to see how it happens over turns. But yeah, I'm again very pleased with what Isabel's done. She's done a lot of background reading. She's done a lot of reflection. And again, it's a matter of just, continuing on next semester, is very much narrowing it down.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, thank you very much, Jerry. And thank you very much, Isabel. Congratulations. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry. Can I say something too? Can I ask
course.
something? Okay,
Yes.
well, first, thank you, Dr. Mockford, for all your help. And this is a question for you too. Well, I was thinking about these two speech acts, request and refusals, because I see that they can be like linked sometimes. So that's why I was thinking about these two. But do you think, is that okay to use two, or should I focus only on one? That's my question for you.
Probably what we need to do is to look at what's involved with a request and what's involved with a refusal. Because a request is you're trying to get someone to do something for you. So you need to, doing my favorite topic, politeness, you need to think about how polite you're going to be when you ask someone to do something. Whilst a refusal is also politeness, but the other way. You're rejecting someone's face. So at this stage, I would keep both of them. But it's like everything with a thesis. The more you go along, you might say, well, let's drop one and just stay with another one, yeah? And I think that's the process of doing a thesis, and it'll be your decision, whether to keep two. It's really, do they help you achieve your research objective? That's what it's going to come down to. Is one speech act enough, or do you need two to make some sort of comparison? Like I say, the one with the request, the way that you approach someone else's face, and refusal, that you're sending a negative message to someone. So I think, we need to just see that later on, but it'll be your decision, really. You want to achieve an objective. Do you need both, or could you do it with one speech act?
Okay, thank you.
Very much. And it was a very good question, Isabel, and it was a wise answer. Thank you, Jerry. And I think it's time for our last presentation, Hugo Eduardo Miramontes Medina, and the title of the thesis was a little bit changed. It was the awareness of affixation in an ESL classroom, and I think you have deleted through error analysis, Hugo, but well, the stage is all yours, so go ahead.
Thank you very much. So first, I wanted to start off by saying that there was a little bit of an inconvenience at the very beginning of the semester. So I didn't work as I wanted to work or as I could have. So I tried my best to make it work. So I'm gonna invite you to, well, if you have any comments for improvement, just let me know. Yeah, the title changed a little bit because I wanted to work at first with error analysis, but then it changed because of what I wanted to work didn't need error analysis, so I took it off. And now is English as a second language learners derivational and fixation awareness from a public middle school at Tamazula de Gordiano, Jalisco. And well, I also want to thank my thesis director, Dr. Sara, for her guidance throughout this semester. So the next section, just hold on, let me take this one. Okay, so that's the title, and in the outline, I got 4 steps: the introduction, the research paper information, the theoretical framework, and the methodology. Now, the first one, introduction. So in a few words, what I'm going to research is how ESL students build vocabulary, mainly derivational affixation, with some part of explicit and implicit, or how they know if it's implicit or explicit, on how their knowledge is implicit or explicit. Now, I divided this into 3 sections. The first one is vocabulary, the next one is morphology, and the last one is about the methodology. So in vocabulary, I mixed the educational and learning process of vocabulary, and then on the morphology section, it's about the affixation process. And finally, how I'm going to work with the methodology. Now, the objectives. My research question is, how were students in using derivational affixations to build vocabulary? Now, one of the main issues that I've found is that students usually say that they understand, but they don't really know how to produce the language because they don't have that much vocabulary to use. So everything came out or everything started by saying, well, you can produce language. Just you need to know how to mix prefixes and suffixes to create new words. So you don't really need to learn all the words in the English language. You just need to know how to make them. So from that, it's where my research question started. Like, do they know? Do they explicitly or implicitly know this? So I wanted to test or know how were our students into using these derivational affixations to build vocabulary. Now, once we have the question, we move on to the objective. So with this awareness, I want to identify their level of derivational affixation awareness. And number 2, if that awareness is implicit or explicit, because sometimes they know the rules, but they don't really know how to use it, or they do. But on the other way around, they don't know the rule explicitly, but they know the rules implicitly. They know how to use it, but they don't know how to explain it. So I wanted to look for that too. Now, what is the justification? It's to make or to contribute to decision-making strategies so teachers can use them in class to make improvements if needed. Now, my theoretical framework is divided in 3 sections. The first one is about vocabulary acquisition. Number 2, English morphology, and 3, affixation process in English. So first of all of the researchers and writers that I have over here, which is Nation, Schmidt, Bauer, McCarthy, Plagg, and Quirk, they're all linguistics, but they focus on different things. Nation and Schmidt, they focus they focus on the pedagogical or the language acquisition topics. But then the other four, Bauer, McCurry, and Plack and Quirk, they focus on the morphology or word formation part of linguistics. So I think I cover pretty much the main researchers of this theoretical framework. In the first section, it's about vocabulary acquisition. And it's also divided in 3 sections. So I started from I started narrowing this path of vocabulary acquisition. I started talking about vocabulary importance for second language acquisition, then learners' vocabulary limitation. I previously explained about just they think, or in this case, students understand, but they don't have a way of producing the language. And that is one limitation to really talk and explain and have a really good conversation in English. And number 3, I'm going to use the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages, which is a very important process of languages, because they explicitly tell us what a student or a learner should be doing in each level. Moving on, I'm going to talk a little bit about English morphology, which is morphemes, which are the smallest units of a language. And they're divided in 2, which is free. Free morphemes, they stand by themselves. That means they have a meaning by themselves. On the other hand, we have bound morphemes, which they don't. They're the opposite of free form morphemes. In this case, we have 2, derivational and inflectional. I'm gonna focus more on derivational, which they're used to create new meanings. Inflectional, on the other way, they just change the form of the word. They don't really change the meaning, which derivational morphemes do. And we have 2 examples. For example, happy is a meaning, happy. But if we add the prefix on, we create unhappy, which is a new word with new meaning. The same happens with teach, with the verb teach. If we add the suffix er, now we have a noun. So instead of a verb teach, we have the noun teacher. And finally, we have the derivational affixation process. In this case, we have prefixes and suffixes. We have prefixes that help us use the negative, reverse, intensify, etc. And we have some examples like disadvantage, undo, recover. They change the meaning of the root word. And then we have suffixes, and suffixes help us transform the words into nouns, adjectives, verbs, adverbs, like boyish, clearance, exactly. And all these process of prefixes and suffixes, all this process of affixation, help us to get linguistic abilities to communicate in a very concise and clear way. So learners have a way of communicate effectively. In this case, we have previous studies from Ariadne and Setiari. They basically have the same, not the same, but similar studies. They use a descriptive qualitative research, and their work is about finding derivational affixations in novels. And the first one, Ariadne's research, is first knowing the roots, and from that learners can create or build new vocabulary. On the other way, CTRE, they use Katambas and Fromkin's theories. That means Katamba is about how new words are formed over derivational morphology, and Fromkin's work is about the hierarchy of structure of words. And finally, the methodology is the participants that I'm going to use and the instruments. So it's the school where I work. It's Escuela Secundaria General Ignacio Zaragoza. It's a public middle school at Tamazula, Jalisco, a region from the south. It's near Colima's volcano over there. So the participants are third grade students, aged 14 to 15. They have taken 2 years. Well, they primarily have taken 2 years of English as a second language. That means they have an A2 level. And this is an estimated amount of students, 20. Sometimes there are more students, sometimes there are less. That depends on the group, but it's usually around 20 students. And finally, the instruments. I'm gonna take 2 instruments, a matching task activity and a word building activity. Why is this? Because I'm gonna check implicit and explicit knowledge of affixation, derivational affixation. And the way I'm gonna check for explicit affixation process is about matching task. I'm gonna match if they know the categories and their meaning explicitly. And then I'm gonna make another activity, which is the word building activity. So it's about this one, a word building activity, like filling the gaps, if they can create a new word to complete a sentence. So it's one of the activities. The matching task is to know if they explicitly know the meanings and rules of affixation, derivational affixations. And the other activity, the other task is about it's to know if they implicitly know the rules. So in this case, I'm gonna know if they know if they're aware of this and how explicitly, and then with the other activity, implicitly. And finally, these are my references, the ones that I used the most, or where I took most of the information to make this research. And yeah, that's it.
Okay, thank you very much, Hugo. And well, it's time for questions and comments, and Dr. Castro Yañez, and then Dr. Mockford. Sonny?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. I thought you disappeared.
Okay, can you please go back to the research question in the presentation?
Sure. Let me share presentation. There it is.
Okay. I'm gonna ask something that you may have discussed with Dr. Sara before, but how will you measure awareness?
With the implicit and explicit activities.
Because I was
But that's a very good question.
Yeah, maybe
I think there's
maybe you
more.
have discussed this, but maybe you could use metalinguistic awareness elicitation techniques, for the instruments, so you can actually measure, or can not measure, but maybe to describe and elicit awareness. Because I think, well, when I read it, it was like, red flag, right? Because it's so difficult, right, to measure awareness. So I was thinking that maybe you can rely on metalinguistic awareness, okay? And that's my only comment.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wrote it down, so I'm gonna look for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonny. And Dr. Mockford?
It's just a couple of questions, which maybe you covered and I missed. Are you going to look, when you look at affixation, will you choose between the most productive and least productive affixes, which would be one of my questions, to think about that. And also when you think of affixes, I mean, there's several parts to them, like, well, obviously the spelling can change, pronunciation can change, you know, if we have photograph and photographer, etc., and meaning. So I wondered, how are you going to deal with those, or will you just take one aspect when you're looking at that? Because I think it's a really, really good area of teaching, because it increases students' vocabulary very, very quickly. Obviously, one problem is to try and make it interesting, but looking at your activities, they look interesting, because, you know, when you're doing it at advanced level, you know, for TOEFL, it's really difficult to make it interesting affixations, but it's incredibly important because you can increase someone's vocabulary range very quickly. So those were really just my two questions.
Well, I was thinking about going for the most common ones, the ones for their level they usually know. That's where I'm going, because at their level or at A2 level, they don't really know that much of vocabulary. So I'm trying to get the basics.
So that would be more for recognition than production.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Mockford. Yeah, Dr. Ramos, but however, I'm going to make a little cultural parenthesis. I think Dr. Jerry has a very interesting comment, Hugo, and I think the justification for working on specific affixes could be based on the productivity of the affixes. So just think about it, because it is a very interesting comment. Okay, Dr. Ramos, be my guest.
Yes, first of all, congratulations. It is a very interesting topic in regards that this derivational affixation is very productive when it comes to teaching languages, right? It makes students independent. It makes students be or to have some sort of linguistic security, let's say. But I was thinking, oh, this is third grade secondary, right?
Yeah.
Secondary students. What is the purpose for them to be more productive? And don't take me wrong. I mean, it is important for them to be productive, but what if you connect this idea into justification that they are, or most of them are, about to get into university level, and probably you can also explore what they are tested in regards to language production, and probably go in that way. I don't know if I am making myself understood, but yes, what is the purpose for them to be much more productive? And probably by having that idea that they are getting into higher levels of university, it can help them just to justify a little bit more. Yes, because yes, I agree that they need to be much more productive, but yes, probably having that idea there.
Thank you very much. Yeah. So usually when they start with the basic levels, what they do mainly is build vocabulary. So what about giving them the tools from the beginning on how to build vocabulary, and not just waiting until they are in a medium or advanced level? What about just doing it since the beginning.
Great, fantastic.
Thank you, Maggie. And yeah, Dr. Pimienta.
Hello, everyone. Sorry for being late once again, but I'm glad I
But
was
you're
able to see.
here. But you're
Ah,
here. Thank
Yeah,
you.
but I was actually really glad to see Hugo's presentation. I think it was very interesting. I think from the very beginning, like when he was interviewed in the program, he presented this. So from the very beginning, I knew it was going to be a very interesting topic. Well, the only question that I have is, what are the pedagogical implications of whether students use explicit or implicit processing? Is there anything on the literature that you have found that says that by using explicit or implicit knowledge, is there any beneficial aspect on these or something that you have found so far?
I found a little bit of information, but that I thought it was good to go further in the topic. But yeah, I definitely am gonna look for more information about that. But at least the implications of knowing how to use a language are beneficial for students. So that's the aim I'm going. Like if they know how to use it, because I think we've all heard students saying, I understand, but I don't know how to say it. So everything came from that. So yeah, I think there are pedagogical information about going this way, but I think that's a very good question because I need to look for more information about that.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Vero, for your comments. And well, in my case, I want to thank you all because all the comments are really interesting for us since we have been working. We have not been working as we wished, right, during the semester. However, I think it's a very interesting topic, especially with this idea that morphology for morphology has no sense. So the idea of doing morphology in order to increase vocabulary, because we're going to work also on semantics or even on the use with pragmatics, it would be just like very good, right? It's a little bit the same comment I had for prosody. Oh, I mean, prosody for prosody is just like useless, or morphology for morphology as well. And this is a very important justification, right? And I mean, why working on derivational morphology? For you and for me, it's just like fascinating. It's a fascinating topic, but not for everyone. But I think you have a perfect justification for that. Thank you very much. I think, well, that's it for today. And that's it for our first week. I know it was a little bit tiring, but I have to be honest with you guys. I'm very proud of your products. I'm very proud of your of your research. The diversity of subjects is just amazing. I love the topics. There are some topics that there are a lot of topics where I am not expert, but I have learned a lot during this colloquium. And in other topics, I have there to provide my humble opinion about the research. So thank you very much, all of you. And we invite you to continue to work with your thesis directors during next semester. You have worked a little bit you have worked a lot during the semester for the constitution of the theoretical framework. And next semester, the idea is to work on the methodology. But yes, of course, it depends on the topic, it depends on the research, it depends on the goals, but that's the general idea. And I want to thank Dr. Macfer, Dr. Ramos, Dr. Castro Yañez, Dr. Pepper, and of course, Dr. Trejo, who's not here. I'm sorry, Vero. It's with of my love. And Dr. Trejo, who's not here, Dr. Ariel, who was in Germany, for being here. They just provided very interesting comments, and the idea is just to enrich your projects with their expertise. So thank you very much, because without you, we wouldn't have this interesting event. And of course, I want to thank you, my students, for your effort. We could see this effort during the whole, the whole colloquium, during the presentations. They were very interesting. I saw just like the creativity you printed on your own presentations, and I thank you very much for that. So I think that's going to be it. Sonny, could we just stop the recording so